Can it? Do you have our sound on? Shut it off.
Hello.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning. How come I have a screen that, oh, there we go. Now we have a screen. Okay, good morning all. Today is Tuesday, April 28th, 2020. The Board of Supervisors of the County of Del Norte and the governing body of all other special assessment and taxing districts for which said board so acts is now meeting in regular session. Only those items that indicate a specific time will be heard at the assigned time. All other items may be taken out of sequence to accommodate the public and staff availability. Kylie, would you please take roll?
Supervisor Howard?
Here.
Supervisor Cowan?
Here.
Supervisor Gitlin?
Roger, I think you need to turn your mic on.
Here.
Supervisor Berkowitz?
Here.
And Chair Hemmingson?
Here. And now we're going to take a moment of reflection. And now if you all please stand, Roger, will you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Please put your right hand over your heart. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God,
under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Introduction of new employees. Do we have any?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. County Council, any actions from closed session?
Yes. With a motion by Supervisor Howard, a second by Supervisor Cowan, and a 5-0 vote, the board voted to defend the case Gilbert versus County of Del Norte, CVUJ 2020-1091, and also reporting that the previous closed session on the 21st had no reportable action.
Thank you. At this time, I would request any deletions, corrections, or additions from board members to the agenda. In order to add an item to the agenda, the matter must have come to the attention of the county subsequent to the posting of the agenda, and the matter requires action before the next regular meeting of the Board of Supervisors. Are there any items? Okay, seeing no items, we will move on to brief reports, announcements relative to the County of Del Norte programs and projects, progress by 2x2 committees, school committees, etc. We're going to start with Supervisor Berkowitz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Over the last 2 weeks, I received numerous questions with the same theme. When are we going to open up Del Norte County? In a recent conversation with Dr. Raywald, he believes that the governor needs to give us some flexibility that reflects our geography and population tendency. I would hope that we can open up some areas of the county in the very near future. In other news, the Redwood Coast Transit Authority reports that even though the future is unpredictable, RCTA will have enough funds to see us through the current emergency. Supervisor Gitlin and I attended a LAFCO meeting where we discussed the Cal LAFCO board meeting expenses and discussed the fiscal year 2021 proposed budget. Along with the rest of the board, I attended the special board meeting last Tuesday. Lastly, I would like to propose a special board meeting to send a letter to the other rural counties who, like us, have had small numbers of the virus, and to join us in a letter to the governor to open our county up in a very limited way. And that's my proposal for a special meeting. I would hope that we could all agree. And that's my report, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Supervisor Howard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's been a busy couple of weeks since our last meeting. I'll start first with the California Fish and Game Commission meeting. As you are aware, and as we discussed, we had issues with potential trout season closures for this state that the commission was considering at the direction of COVID-19 related issues. We felt that this was a very poor decision to make it a blanket initiative for the state of California. And we were able to discuss with the commissioners and the director of the California Department of Fish and Game, who would have that authority, that prior to the meeting that took place last week, that those restrictions be at the request of those specific counties, and to work very closely in consultation and coordination with the counties to ensure that it's a site-specific request for those type of closures. We were successful in that language being inserted into the directive that the director would be able to close in consultation trout waters. At this time, because the county is not requesting that, our trout season will remain open. Also, the following day, the commission considered the tag allocation increases for Roosevelt elk in our area, and successfully approved the Department of Fish and Wildlife's request to increase the tag allocation by 40, maximizing the total allotment in the EAR from the previous year. So those are two good pieces of information, something that the board has been paying particular attention to. Had a North Coast Unified Air Quality Management District meeting that focused specifically on the Air Management District's budget. Also had a Natural Resource Goals Committee meeting where we looked at mitigation parcels around Lake Earl. Had a meeting with Kevin O'Donnell with the Consul General's Office of Japan, specific to the new Consul General that has now replaced Consul General Iuma. And then also with Supervisor Hemmingson, met with Jeff Stoddard and Sean Fries with the California Department of Fish and Wildlife about concerns with hoof rot disease in Roosevelt elk here in Del Norte County. As Supervisor Berkowitz mentioned, attended the emergency board meeting, and then followed that closely with the meeting with Caltrans District 1 Director Matt Brady, where we focused discussion on Highway 199 STAA issues, issues around North Indian Road and requests from Toloadini Nation. And then again, the data that is now coming out of the Del Norte Local Transportation Commission study that would suggest the intersection of Highway 199 at Elk Valley Crossroads has an incident rate of accidents that is 8 times higher than the state's average. Those discussions took a couple hours, but we are moving forward and trying to figure out how best to move forward with these cases. As you may be aware, we are still in litigation on Highway 199 with 3 litigants, Friends of Del Norte, Center for Biological Diversity, and EPIC. That litigation will continue to move forward this month, next month in May. Had a special tri-agency meeting to pay some bills, and also had a conference call with the California State Association of Counties, looking for issues Del Norte County was having specific to COVID-19 and what they could learn. I'll follow up that later with some requests to the board in this public outreach report. Also met with Wild Rivers Community Foundation representatives Gina Zatola and Michelle Carrillo on impacts of COVID-19 to minority populations in our community. And then as a very long discussion with proponents for the Klamath River Dam removal, had a conference call with representatives from the Klamath River Dam removal project with County Council and our consultants in working out terms and strategy on how best to move forward with specific points of that project. Met with Chris Nielsen, who represents Senator McGuire on the issues that we're having with state park closures in our area and looking for more of an individual approach for our county and how best to deal with the gates that are currently going in, which we will discuss in item 20 on our agenda. And then also some follow-up meetings with Elizabeth Cable on the Klamath Dam removal project. And lastly, I would like to encourage the board. CSAC is having a very strong push right now to have every county representative in the state begin to lobby the feds for appropriations specific to local governments. As you're aware, in some of the estimates that Clinton Shad has given us, that we may be affected substantially here as the length of this shutdown continues throughout our county. We need to request allocation of those federal funds in the neighborhood of $5 billion, which would roll down towards the state of California to help replenish the lost revenues and temporary expansion of benefits in our areas. Also, we need to discuss in that letter the importance of the CARE Act that came down through 3.0 and 3.5 of the recent legislation by Congress, which doesn't have the outreach and impact that we hope it would have had to small businesses in Del Norte County. We need to request that there's some loosening of some of that language that will allow it to trickle down to businesses like sole proprietors to apply for programs like PPP, which is the Paycheck Protection Program, and also SBA disaster relief funds, which are still on a lockdown as of this morning. PPP has opened back up, but it's still a very limited pool of people that can apply for those funds. And that's the majority of businesses in Del Norte County. So I'd like at our next meeting, Chairman, to ensure that we have some of the requests being considered by CSAC where we could send to Greg Burns and our representatives an ask for some of these measures to come down to our local county. And that is all in my report, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Supervisor Gitlin.
Almost all of my elected duties were consumed by the COVID-19 virus. As Supervisor Berkowitz mentioned, the local area formation commission met last week via teleconference call. Commission opened up public hearings for the Birch Ocean View Community Service District, the Del Norte Fairgrounds, and our local budget for the year, and adopted a resolution accepting the Birch Ocean View Municipal Services Review and the district's sphere of influence as being exempt from California Environmental Quality Act. LAFCO budget remains pretty much the same as last year, a slight increase in our insurance policy, and Cal LAFCO dues increased a modest $300. So it's about $90,000 for the upcoming year. After a special board meeting last week where our board reopened Walker Road, I attended a rally in support of gradually reopening our economy. I joined about 75 others along Highway 101 in asking our governor to relax some of the onerous restrictions which prevent the so-called unessential businesses from generating income, paying taxes, and engaging in commerce, which keeps our county operating. As many of you already know, Curry County will be opening up its motels and restaurants and other businesses May 1st, that's Friday, after its Board of Commissioners, as expected, will pass a resolution to reopen Curry County tomorrow, April 29th. Curry will also join Douglas, Coos, Josephine, Jackson counties in asking Governor Brown to exempt those individual counties from the governor's executive orders. It's a bit disheartening to learn the board of directors of the Crescent City Del Norte Chamber of Commerce voted to cancel the 4th of July parade and associated events, including the deck party, fully 60 days before the event. And I understand there are mitigating circumstances, but I would respectfully disagree that alternatives could not have been implemented to allow this important historical event to take place. And I'm hoping that the board will reconsider its action and look for an option to keep our parade going in some shape, form, or fashion. I had a very lengthy telephone conversation with Public Health Officer Warren Raywalt, and specifically about his flexibility and what controls he has in allowing soft openings of many of our businesses. Dr. Raywalt does have some flexibility, but must adhere to Governor Newsom's executive orders. He did share some important information that the now closed businesses should develop at this time alternative plans to be ready when the opening comes from Governor Newsom's office, such as outside dining for restaurants where applicable, with social distancing and appropriate precautions suggested that many businesses should develop a protocol for doing business by appointments, while the executive orders are hopefully being withdrawn very soon. Also conducted a very lengthy and productive conversation with Auditor Clint Shadd. Del Norte County continues to hemorrhage money as traditional streams have dried up. The transient occupancy tax, which anticipates about $500,000 in income to present, is virtually non-existent. There are other income streams which remain closed, and the county has already begun to close down entrances to its county parks. As the specifics of the impact to the budget were discussed in closed session, I'm not at liberty to discuss the worst case scenario through the end of the year, but I can tell you our tourist industry operates on a seasonal basis beginning right now in May and operating through Sea Cruise in October. The damage to our community is ongoing and severe. It is my hope our board will support measures to request Sacramento and Governor Newsom's office to relax the restrictions so a semblance of our local economy can be salvaged. And in that note, I support Supervisor Berkowitz's request to have a special meeting to develop a letter of support to the governor for exemption. I am disappointed in the 4th of July parade decision. And again, 60 days ahead of time, I'm just thinking that there could have been some alternative in place to quickly change around to salvage this parade. And finally, I ask our board to open up the Flynn Center and conduct its business where the public has access to our governing board. Of course, appropriate social distancing and face masks would be a precaution implemented. Too many of our citizens have told me they feel disconnected to our board and feel their voice is not being heard, despite access to the Zoom technology. I support the reopening of our public chambers for our next meeting. Here's the latest COVID-19 update for Del Norte County. 314 tests administered, 302 are negative, 908 test results. There is one new positive case who was not hospitalized. 2 recovered cases are back in the community. Pelican Bay State Prison remains COVID-19 free with a total of 7 inmates tested, all negative. There are 0 deaths attributed to the virus in Del Norte County. Thank you very much. That's my report.
Thank you. Vice Chair Cowan.
Thank you, Chairman. Since our last meeting, I attended a Solid Waste Authority meeting where we had our green awards. Jessica Setnar from Wild Rivers Outpost was a recipient of that award. We have decided to roll them out slowly since we can't have our normal bring everybody together and do all the awards at once. I've had several meetings around homeless, so I won't get into all of them. We did have a mobile shower meeting with the Department of Health and Human Services with Carmen and Heather, as well as representatives from the Senior Center. We're hoping that the Senior Center will be able to have an MOU with them to oversee the mobile showers, and then we'll be working with other nonprofits to help run them. So that was a lengthy meeting. Actually, we've had a couple on that. Also been meeting with Daphne pretty regularly to make sure that the emergency showers that are currently set up right now over at the hotel are running smoothly and that she has everything she needs. They have been a success. They're going on right now. They happen Tuesday mornings at 10 a.m. I as well attended that special meeting of the Board of Supervisors last week. And also many conversations around COVID-19. I won't get in too much about it. I think the other supervisors have spoken to what we want to see in our community. I do want to say as we are having those conversations, I know sometimes Mr. Gitlin makes it sound like we're not having conversations regarding opening up, but I think that is a daily conversation of how it's going to happen and when it's going to happen and what's the best for Del Norte County. I don't think anyone on this board argues the fact that we are completely different from the rest of California, and we do not fit in that one size fits all. And I believe that all of us are fighting for Del Norte County in that aspect to make sure that we open up in the best way and the best manner for us. And that's not just open everything at once. I don't believe that is responsible, but to probably get going on how we're going to do it, which is already happening. So I just want to let everybody out there know that we are working on it and have been working on it and will continue to work on it daily. Our staff is doing that. And we would like to see our economy open up just as carefully and quickly as the rest of you. CSAC and money coming into our community, it's not happening. I'm not sure why, but Chris, maybe you're going to have more answers on that. But what I'm hearing from everybody is all this money promised, whether it's from just your stimulus personal check to programs for businesses, it doesn't seem to be coming into Del Norte County at all. And I'm not sure why and what the holdup is on different things, but I'm getting a lot of that. So calls to the senator, not getting a whole lot of answers, maybe tomorrow night in his town hall to our community, along with Humboldt and Trinity, that we might get more answers from the state as far as helping us get through this while we are working on getting back open. And that's it from me, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair Cowan. Appreciate that. Yeah, and I have been dealing with a lot of calls and meetings around the COVID-19 virus as well. And the 4th of July cancellation certainly came as a big surprise to me as well as others in the community. And I've been getting a lot of calls on that. But other than that, I've had a staff meeting, as Supervisor Howard said. We had a staff meeting on Pacific Shores. We had a fish and wildlife meeting having to do with the Roosevelt elk hoof rot. Was involved in the special board meeting, had agenda review. As was mentioned, we had a tri-agency meeting. Had a whale risk assessment management plan meeting with the Nature Conservancy. Had a meeting with Grant Werschel, who co-chairs with me the Smith River Collaborative. We have an upcoming meeting, so we had some discussions about that as well as the future of the SRC. And yesterday had about a 4-hour conference meeting with the whale working group having to do with the risk assessment of the whale entanglements. And again, we assess the risk as low, even though the director has closed the season as of, or will close the season as of May 15th for Dungeness Crab. And that's about it for me. We are going to take up the consent agenda quickly. I would be looking for
Move to approve.
I have a motion to approve the consent and a second to approve the consent agenda. Is there any public comment? And Kylie, is there Any written public comment on the consent agenda? I'm not hearing you. You might need to turn your mic on if you're talking.
I have 3 written public comments, but none of them are relating to anything on the consent agenda that I've seen.
Okay, and is there anybody raising their hands for public comment on the consent agenda?
I am not seeing anybody at this time.
Okay, so seeing no public comment, then we'll bring it back to the board. Any discussion or comments from board members? Seeing none, Kylie, would you please poll the vote?
Supervisor Gitlin,
Yes.
Supervisor Berkowitz,
Yes.
Supervisor Cowan,
Yes.
Supervisor Howard,
Yes.
Chair Hemmingson.
Yes, I need to recuse myself on item number 5, the conflict of interest. Okay, we are going to move on to our 10:25 timed item, which is public comment. Members of the public may address the board on matters which are within the jurisdiction of the board. If you are addressing the board on a matter listed on the agenda, you may be asked to hold your comments until the board takes up that matter. You will be limited to 3 minutes. Kylie, do we have any written public comment?
I have 3 of them.
Okay.
I will start. One is from, they just put initials JT. It says, hello, I have been staying in the same residence in Crescent City via Airbnb since 3/26 and have stayed sheltered in place in strict compliance with the state and county guidelines. My current rental term is expiring on May 1st. I'm now understanding that I will not be able to extend my stay beyond May 1st due to the current short-term rental restrictions that are in place. I understand the rationale for restricting short-term rentals to reduce the likelihood that someone might bring the COVID-19 virus into the community from outside. However, it doesn't make sense to me that I should be required to leave the community after having been here for over a month, considering that I provide no higher risk than any other resident of the community. I would hope that the board would provide an exclusion of the rule for anyone who has been here for a minimum of 2 weeks and is renewing a stay. Thank you. And then I have another one. They just put their first name and it's Amy. And it says, thank you. This one I actually would prefer to read, Jerry, towards the end after we discuss AB 2612 and 1191.
Okay,
This one is related to those items, so I'm going to hold off on that one.
okay.
And then I have one from a Thomas Barnes, and it's kind of long, so bear with me. It says Sacramento, California officials from 6 rural Northern California counties and 14 small cities have urged Governor Gavin Newsom to let the counties reopen their economies, marking the most significant pushback yet from local leaders against a mandatory stay-at-home order that is in its 2nd month that has left 3 million people out of work. Of the 500,000 people in Sutter, Yuba, Butte, Colusa, Tehama, and Glenn counties who are actively lobbying the governor's office to reopen, there are only 69 confirmed cases of CV. What is going on in Del Norte County? Why are we not one of the counties or cities that have requested to open on a planned controlled basis? Why is the public kept in the dark as to where we stand and the efforts that are being made to get us reopened? We are not San Francisco, Los Angeles, Sacramento, etc. We have 3 cases, 2 recovered at home, 1 active case recovering at home, and 0 deaths. Pelican Bay has 0 COVID-19 cases and 0 deaths. Curry County has 4 cases and 0 deaths, and Curry County is open for business May 1st. Why do we have to remind you that you work for this community, not Sacramento? You represent the businesses and people here. We have read your public health website, the community updates and press releases, the COVID-19 link, the Office of Emergency Service link, the notice that the parks and public offices are closed, but nowhere is there any message as to what is being done to restart the community and the businesses, other than you are following the recommendations of the governor's office executive orders. Other county officials and other communities make an effort to keep their communities updated as to what is being done to get them reopened. They make an effort to make a case to the governor's office as to why they are different from San Francisco, LA, Sacramento, etc. They're working to make a difference to help their community. They're just not regurgitating Sacramento's talking points and waiting for the governor to tell them what to do. This is not a case that one size fits all. We are a small rural community just like some of the others that are making the effort to get their communities up and running. We have a small economy. Our businesses cannot afford to remain shut down. They will go bankrupt. The employees will not have jobs to come back to. The economy will falter and fail. They don't have government jobs that pay them no matter what. They have to remain open to eat. Give them hope and a positive message about what you are doing to get them back in business instead of talking points from the governor's office in Sacramento. We can read that in the papers. We want to know what you are doing. We want to be updated on a daily basis as to your plans and progress in reopening businesses and jobs. Do your job for your community. Give this community some hope that it is why you are there.
Is that it?
That's it on that one.
Okay, thank you. Jay, on the item that the first one she read, I think she said from JT, who had already stayed here for 30 days. Isn't that available? Isn't the short term the only restriction that we have, the short-term stays? Once they're here for 30 days, they can continue to stay, can't they?
I believe so. I'd have to check the original order that came out on the short term and then of course, the clarification from Dr. Raywald, but I believe that's correct.
Yeah, that's the way I understood it. I just wanted to get clarification on that. Okay, is there any other public comment, Kylie? Any?
I do have a raised hand.
Okay.
It's from Robert Dorigo.
Okay, Robert, are you there? If you're there, we're not hearing you.
Sorry, my luck.
Can you hear me?
There you go.
Sorry about that.
Okay.
Hey, I just wanted to say, thanks to Supervisor Berkowitz. I know there's a big show of kind of everybody wanting to open. I think there's we're a real divided nation about, I was looking at this one study, really, there was a survey, and they went around all these countries to find out, do you generally trust the next person to do the right thing? In our country, we get very low numbers, on that, and it kind of shows some division. And I wonder what that division to affect, a public health response, and I wanted to thank Supervisor Berkowitz for saying, I think, something that really needed to be said, and was a very brave thing to say, on social media for our community the other day. And it's probably about 50-50, it looks like, in our community as far as how we're taking this seriously or not. But, we should look at, we're going to look at that comprehensive economic development strategy. And I noticed one thing looking through it, and that's that we have about twice the average deaths for respiratory illnesses as the state in our community already. We have a lot of elders, we've got a lot of pre-existing conditions in this country as a whole, in this county specifically. And I think we need to hold out. I definitely don't want to see hotels open right now. I definitely don't want to see some invitation to people to come here from outside our community. And let's see. I think that's probably all I have to say there. But I just wanted to give some support to Supervisor Berkowitz, thinking that, hey, this is a pandemic. If we lose what we would lose from the swine spreads flu with this, we would lose about 100 residents if it's about a 0.5% fatality, and 40% of us got it. That would equal 100 Del Norters. So anybody who thinks this ain't that big of a deal, maybe that isn't such a big deal, but they have to accept that that's 100 Del Norters, and they're going to want to know who the heck wanted to open up so damn quick. All right, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Robert.
Thanks, Robert.
Is there any other public comment? Kylie,
Terry, I
anybody else?
see that there is somebody else that has their hand raised. But it's Thomas Barnes. It's the one I just read aloud, so I'm not sure how you want to handle that.
Oh, he's already had his public comment read into the record. Council?
We generally only allow one public comment per person, but if maybe he has it on a different item, he might want to
Okay, if
comment on a different item.
well, but he used up his 3 minutes with what she was reading. So
Yeah, he'll get another public comment ability on any other item.
okay, on any of the other agenda items?
Yeah.
But not under
Mr.
the,
Chairman, I think there's.
but not under public comment, is that right? That's-
Yeah, on public comment, this discussion, perhaps Mr. Mr. Thomas's wife can speak. She has 3 minutes. Is that a possibility?
Is that who it is, Kylie?
It just says Thomas Barnes. I don't have any idea.
Council?
Yeah, if there's a different person using the same account, perhaps in the same room, they each would have an ability to speak.
Okay. Well, let's hear what they got to say.
Thomas's mic's muted.
Okay.
Thomas, can you hear us? Are you there? The mic is unmuted, but I'm not hearing anything.
Okay. I'm not hearing anything either.
The mic. Thomas, can you hear us? The mic keeps getting muted and unmuted.
Is there any other public comment?
Can you hear me? Can you hear me at all?
Yes.
Hello?
Yes.
You can hear me?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, this is Thomas Barnes. Yeah, I have a public comment to make regarding, it's not regarding the issue that you read. I think that you could have read my comments a little bit slower. I thought that they were important for the community, but it really doesn't make any difference. I have sent those to the city, the county, the county, the director of public health, the Chamber of Commerce, and 3 newspapers. But the comment that I want to make is that I just want to remind everybody, we haven't had 100 deaths in Del Norte County. We have had 0 deaths in Del Norte County. We only have 3 cases in Del Norte County, all of which have recovered at home. So let's get this into perspective. The second thing that I want to make a comment on is that I really take issue with the disrespect that I see coming from the board, from supervisors towards other supervisor members. I've attended several of your meetings, and I'm speaking today of Lori Cowan and her comments about Roger Gitlin. She doesn't have to make reference to the fact that regardless of what Roger says, this is what really is going on. If she has comments to make, then she can make her comments in a positive manner without demeaning another supervisor. And the third thing that I want to say is that Lori gave us a lot of talk about all the great things that she's doing and that you're all doing, and all of these things that are going on behind the scenes to service this community and to reopen the community. Well, if that's really good, Mrs. Cowan, Supervisor Cowan, why don't you tell us exactly, specifically what it is that you're doing to get this community reopened so that we can put open businesses and put people back to work? I will go ahead and conclude by saying that I'm really tired, and I think I don't just speak for myself, but I speak for others, of seeing this demeaning actions by board members towards other board members. I see it at every single board meeting that I go to. There's always, and the comments are always directed towards 2 of the board members, and that would be Bob Berkowitz and Roger Gitlin. They deserve respect from you, as well as they deserve respect from the rest of us. It's unprofessional behavior. And if our board cannot conduct themselves in a professional manner, then you need some kind of guidance or help, or maybe you shouldn't be on the board. That's the only comments that I really have. Thank you for giving me the time to speak. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Kylie. Is there anything else?
I'm not seeing any more raised hands.
Okay, so there's no more raised hands. We will close the public comment and move on to general government items. And we will take up item number 11. Is the sheriff on the line?
Jerry, I was contacted that he was under the weather, but he was working with Antoinette to try to have Bill Stevens comment on this item for us. I'm not sure if Bill has been able to get on yet.
I know Bill is trying to connect right now. Maybe you can continue with another item and I'll try to get him connected.
Okay, let's move on to item number 12. Approve the registered nurse position for the public health branch to start at range 50, step C, effective hire date May 1st, 2020, as requested by the Director of Health and Human Services. Heather?
Yes, hi. Good morning, board. This is Heather Snow, Director of DHHS. I am excited that we have a new registered nurse to start her job as soon as this is approved. As you guys know, this is a challenging position for us to fill. Any professional positions are difficult for us, and especially at this time, it's very good that we have a nurse to join our public health team, and she is very needed. I have one minor correction. I made the incorrect reference to the MOU. This position is in the SEIU unit, and it's under 4.6 in that MOU regarding the beginning salary, requesting your approval. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so I would be looking for a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the registered nurse position for the public health branch to start at range 50, step C, effective date hire of May 1st, 2020, as requested by Director of Department of Health and Human Services with the changes that she discussed in the MOU.
Okay, can I get a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any public comment?
I am not seeing any.
Okay, no public comment, then we'll bring it back to the board. Any further discussion? Kylie, would you please poll a vote?
Supervisor Berkowitz,
Yes.
Supervisor Gitlin,
Yes.
Supervisor Howard,
Yes.
Supervisor Cowan,
Yes.
Chair Hemmingson.
Yes.
Gary,
Okay,
I see that Bill Stevens is on with us now.
okay. Bill, you want to just talk about the item number 11?
Okay, can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. 11 is about the retroactive pay back to December for the deputy.
That's correct.
And is there any questions about that, or how do you want me to proceed?
Well, the question is, if his hire was December 27th, why are we waiting until almost May to make this retroactive? Why wasn't it done at the time of hire?
I have no idea why there was an oversight on that. I know that he is a lateral hire that has an extensive amount of years with the San Francisco Police Department. And, you know, it's hard to get people with experience to come up north here. So it's good that we've got him on. And why he wasn't given the proper pay to begin with, I don't know, but he is very much deserving of that. As like I said, he's got quite a few years with San Francisco Police Department.
Yeah, well, yeah, I don't think that point is being disputed. It's the lag time, I think, that we wanted the answer to the question that we're not getting the answer to, and you don't have that answer either. So
yeah, I don't know if that was an oversight from personnel or if it was something on our end. I have no idea. I just know that it needs to be corrected.
Chair, that comes from the department. It's part of the personnel action form, and that's the request that comes from the department.
okay,
Gary, I'd make the motion to make the pay retroactive at this time for item number 11.
11. And I'll second that.
okay. I have a motion and a second. Any public comment, Kylie?
Yes, I do have a public comment,
Okay,
and it's going to be from Linda Sutter.
okay.
And
Go ahead, Linda.
Waiting for the sound to be on.
Yeah, I'm trying to unmute her mic. It says she's using an older version of Zoom and it's not allowing me to promote her, to allow her to talk here. Let me try another method here. Okay, she should be able to talk now.
Okay, so I'd just like to know the name of the officer that we got from San Francisco. That's all. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead with your public comment or with your comment on the item.
I just wanted to know the name of the officer that we received because I don't remember getting introduced to a new officer from San Francisco.
Why do you need to know the name?
Who asked that question?
That's not a comment. You're asking a question.
Hey,
Yeah.
Rachel.
Is there a comment or you're asking a question?
I am asking a question in regards to the name of the officer from San Francisco.
Are you
He works for the public, so we should get to know who it is.
And I'm thinking that, was he introduced, Jay, when he was first hired? Do you remember?
I don't recall. I don't have the gentleman's name. Perhaps Bill does.
Bill, are you still on?
Yes, I am.
And what's the name of the officer?
I'm reluctant to give his name in that it's part of a personnel issue, but if Jay has no problem with that, I don't mind giving the name.
I don't have a problem with it. He's a county employee.
What's his first name? His name is Deputy Christopher Downing.
Okay, thank you so much. I don't remember him with this COVID-19. There's probably been several employees hired, maybe not, but this is the first time I've used this on a county meeting, and it's just difficult to stay in touch with our government and what's going on. So that's why I wanted to know.
Yeah, he was hired back in December, end of
Oh.
December.
Oh, yeah. So that's been a while. So, all right. Well, thank you very much. That was it.
Okay. Okay, so is that all the public comment, Kylie?
Yeah, that's all that I see.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second. Would you please poll the vote?
Supervisor Berkowitz,
Yes.
Supervisor Gitlin,
Yes.
Supervisor Cowan,
Yes.
Supervisor Howard,
Yes.
Chair Hemmingson.
Yes. Okay, moving on to item number 13, approve the final draft of the 2019 through 2024 Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy, also known as SEDS, as requested by the County Administrative Officer. Jay?
So as the board may recall, we had this on a previous agenda and there were some questions regarding some sections that had to deal with agriculture and agricultural tourism. And the copy that was given to us at that time did not have those updates. This copy does, and this is the final action to be taken.
Okay.
Move to approve.
I have a motion
Second.
and a second from Supervisor Berkowitz. Any public comment on this, Kylie?
I'm just double checking. Nope, I do not see any at this time.
Okay, seeing no public comment, then we'll bring it back to the board. Any questions or comments? Kylie, would you poll the vote, please?
Supervisor Gitlin,
Yes.
Supervisor Cowan,
Yes.
Supervisor Berkowitz,
Yes.
Supervisor Howard,
Yes.
Chair Hemmingson.
Yes. Okay, moving on to budget transfers. We have budget transfer 04-02 in the amount of $5,000, 04-04 in the amount of $10,200, and 04-06 in the amount of $6,980.
Motion to approve.
I have a motion by Supervisor Gitlin,
Second.
second by Supervisor Berkowitz. Is there any public comment?
I am not seeing any.
Seeing no public comment, then we'll bring it back to the board. Kylie, would you please poll the vote?
Supervisor Howard,
Yes.
Supervisor Cowan,
Yes.
Supervisor Berkowitz,
Yes.
Supervisor Gillen,
Yes.
Chair Hemmingson.
Yes. Okay, moving on to legislative and budget issues. Item number 17, approve and authorize the chair and the Del Norte County Register of Voters to sign a letter of support directed to Governor Gavin Newsom supporting the California Association of Clerks and Election Officials proposed executive order to protect public health by expanding vote by mail options for the November 3rd, 2020 presidential general election, as requested by Elisa. Good morning.
Hello, good morning. So what I brought to you today is a letter that we would like to send our association. Most of the 58 counties has sent a letter already, or they're going before their board today. And what we're suggesting is that we're pretty sure November, the elections in California, it's going to be a different time. And we're just wanting to make sure that each county is represented what works best for us and not a blanket order that we're all going to have to conform to. So the association has come up with a suggested executive order that we would like to send with a letter from our counties. We're pretty sure it's not going to be accepted as is, but we just want to make sure that we're getting in what we think is going to work best. And the main thing that we're hoping for is that the main focus is that we're going to have some wiggle room in each county to make sure that we're going to be able to do what works best for us, and that we're not going to have a lot of orders coming down on us that we just cannot do here. You know, something in LA that they're going to have to do here would be ridiculous. So that's what I have today. I know there's been a lot of negative information kind of out there right now regarding vote by mail voting. I feel like here, I can't speak for other areas, but here it's just not true. I've never personally witnessed any fraudulent vote by mail voting attempts here. I know that the ballot harvesting thing is a big issue. And I do understand that, but I just hope if anybody has questions or concerns that they would, you know, reach out to me with their concerns. And I would like to do the best that I can to reassure people that I don't think that what we're seeing about the vote by mail is really happening here.
Yeah, Elisa, I do have a couple of questions. Is this just a temporary order that you're asking for, just for this election?
Temporary for the November presidential election.
Okay, and why have we not requested to have vote by mail before? I think if your population under 50,000 or something, isn't that something that you can apply for?
But it's not the whole county. It's by districts. And I don't think certain districts would qualify in our state or in our county for all vote by mail, but not the whole county.
Well, my understanding is Calaveras County and maybe Nevada County, just at RCRC, there's just a few counties that I know of that do have a vote by mail.
You're talking about the VCA, which is the Voters' Choice Act, which would be put into effect, where there would both basically be vote centers, and everyone would receive a vote by mail ballot, but there would be vote centers throughout the county set up on election day.
Right.
And that is something that the board would have to approve, would have to be brought before the board and approved. Basically, there are, I think, 13 counties in California that have currently went with that voting model.
Okay. When you vote by mail, does every signature have to be checked?
Yes, and that's part of what I was saying about, I don't think people understand. They're not just turned in and taken at face value. Every signature is checked, every address is checked. If there is discrepancies, the voter is notified that there's a discrepancy, and they're given the opportunity to fix that discrepancy. If it's just that they're voting, their signature is changed or they moved. So it's not, everything's just taken at face value, that every single ballot is checked.
So it's very time intensive I would take it that you have to check every ballot and every vote. So election process would take considerably longer.
It's pretty labor intensive, but actually we're over 60% vote by mail already.
Oh, really? Okay. Okay. So with that, any other questions for Lisa at this time?
Mr. Chairman, I'd move to authorize the chairman and the register of voters to sign a letter of support directed to Governor Gavin Newsom,
Second,
supporting the California Association of Clerks and Elected Officials.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any public comment? Kylie?
I'm double checking and I am not seeing anybody.
Okay, seeing no public comment, then we'll bring it back to the board. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Carries unanimously. Okay, moving on to item number 18, approve and authorize the chair to sign and send a letter of support for AB 2612, which provides up to $100 million annually from the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund and state organics recycling projects as requested by the Director of Solid Waste Management Authority. Is Ted on the line?
He is here.
Hello.
Hey, Ted. Anything you want to say about this?
I was in contact with John Kennedy, who's our legislative advocate on behalf of the rural counties group that we're part of, and we pay dues to engage with them to try to advocate in a more effective way, and this is one example of that. Unfortunately, as many of you are aware, the legislative session has been cut short this year, and really they're going to focus on COVID-19, economic development, and extremely urgent matters. So this bill, AB 2612, was pulled from the committee last week, and then this was due to those changing circumstances. Mr. Kennedy and myself both think it's still worthwhile sending the letter to indicate the board's position on this and to be poised for hopefully next year when it gets introduced.
Okay, thank you. Looking for a motion?
Move to approve.
And I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. Any public comment on this, Kylie?
Chair, I'd like to read the written public comment.
Oh, okay. Is this for both 2612 and 1191 or just 2612?
It looks like it's kind of for both.
Okay, well, that's fine.
Want me
Go
to
ahead.
Go ahead or wait?
Yeah, let's go ahead and read it.
Okay, it says, and the person was just first name Amy. They didn't give a last name. And it says, thank you for supporting Governor Newsom on the state's vote by mail initiative. Also for your letter supporting AB 2612. However, I really think it's a joke to call SB 11 rigid. We're a small town with great potential and some good leaders. My question to you all is if you get an exception from the state to open parking lots for the Redwood National and State Parks within the county, do you have a plan to stock our food supplies for when the tourists come? Meat, chicken, and many produce options are already limited at Safeway, Grocery Outlet, and Wild Rivers markets. There are already so many out-of-state license plates parking on Ender's Beach Road, Highway 199, and other locations within the county. Also, can Supervisor Gitlin please keep his propaganda to a minimum until we get through this pandemic? Thanks.
Okay,
That's what I have.
All right, is there any other public comment on item number 18, which is support for AB 2612?
I am not seeing any other raised hands.
Okay, then we'll bring it back to the board. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Seeing none opposed, it passes unanimously. Moving on to item number 19. Approve and authorize the chair to sign and send a letter of support for SB 1191, which allows low population counties and rural jurisdictions to develop and implement alternative organic waste management programs in place of the rigid and costly SB 1383. mandates as requested by the Director of Solid Waste Management Authority, Ted.
Yes, thank you, Chair Hamilton. This bill is still moving ahead, and it's a really important one. I think some of you are aware of our previous discussions of SB 1383, which is an ambitious program to recover organic materials and keep them out of the landfill, but it is a rather onerous program currently. And so SB 1191 would give some more flexibility in terms of trying to craft a program that makes sense for our county.
Move to approve.
I have a motion.
Second.
And a second. Any public comment?
Can I have a question, please, for Mr.
Any public comment, Kylie?
Double checking. I do not see any.
Supervisor Gitlin?
Yes, Ted, does SB, I read the narrative, SB 1191 replace the, as you described, the more onerous 1383?
No, it does not.
So how does it integrate into mitigating the circumstances other than just it's the population and what have you? It gives us some exemptions. Is that what my understanding is?
Well, specifically at this point, our compliance with the solid waste recycling recovery mandates statewide do allow Cal Recycle to acknowledge a good faith effort. And especially during this time of COVID-19 and the very hard and significant deadlines of SB 1383, it certainly seems appropriate to consider good faith efforts in this context.
Thank you.
Okay, looking for a motion?
We already did that.
I have a motion and a second already.
Oh,
Sure.
sorry. We'll bring it back to the board. Any other comments or questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Seeing none, passes unanimously. Moving on to item number 20. Discuss and direct staff to further engage the state of California by preparing a formal letter to the governor's office or applicable state agency requesting vehicular access and parking be opened in state parks within Del Norte County for local resident and use as requested by Supervisor Howard. Supervisor Howard.
Thank you, Chairman. As you're aware, we've had some considerable discussion around at our last meeting concerning Walker Road and reopening Walker Road, which we unanimously approved last week. Simultaneously, we began discussions with the state of California as directed by state parks through the state's, I believe it was their regional operations center. CEO Serena could correct me on this, most likely, to request that roads within state parks be reopened in Del Norte County, specifically because we're seeing the significant decrease in transient occupancy at this point and the congregation of locals within specific trailheads that are remaining within the Caltrans right-of-ways. We think it's best at this point in time to disperse where those congregations are occurring and allow folks to access the public lands. In addition, what we do see happening right now, and maybe CEO Serena could speak to this also, is a move by state parks to begin to gate many of the locations on our state park lands that access these points. And I know the Northern California Guides Association has made comment on this. I do believe Mike Koopman will be on the line with us today that can speak towards their letter. But more specifically, I thought specifically gating those locations, not just Society Hole, not just Peacock, not just Tan Oak Drive. It sends a bad message to our community in reaction to this. And we need to be treated a little differently here. And I think we have good cause to do so. So I'd like if CEO Serena could comment on the process that we went through last week in requesting a similar type action and the response we got and how that turned out.
The Board of Supervisors at the last meeting had directed me to reach out to state parks and discuss the process in which we could make that request to open areas in Del Norte County, specifically in parks, that were not hard closures, to essentially local traffic because of the issue that Supervisor Howard just mentioned. We've had people congregating in areas that are not formal parking lots, and the issue of parking along 199 became an issue. And as I went through that process, I was in contact with Brett Silver from State Parks, and he had indicated he had direction from above that we should go through the Office of Emergency Services and on to the regional center at the state level. And I was curious as to that, because it wasn't a normal process that we've ever followed when dealing with policy decisions at the state parks level. But I did that. Talked to Mr. Silver, and then went on through our representative, Cal OES for our area, who then passed it up through the chain of command to the regional center. And it's my understanding, once it got to the regional center, they called State Parks, and State Parks said no, they were not interested in doing that. So then it came back down the chain, down through OES, and back to me through our representative, and that was the answer. I'm not sure why we had to go through that step, but I didn't get a lot of detail. In talking with Brett, I was looking at their website, and the website says that they will work with local agencies and local public health officers because it's unique to each area, and that's how they would handle it. Obviously, that isn't how it's being handled, and I pointed that out. Might not have helped our case, but anyway, that's how the process went, and now we're back to where we're at this point. I do think that, in looking, I visited Walker Road on Sunday, and the parking lot had about 3 or 4 vehicles in it that are in that area, I should say. The parking lot there for State Parks is barriered off. But the answer that I got was that some of the barriers had been vandalized, and that's why they were looking at permanent barriers.
Also, I'd like to add, in the COVID-19 response on the State Parks website, they had put specific information into their second paragraph of that response. It said they would work directly with local county representatives and our public health officer to make very site-specific determinations on what's best for our community and work with us to do so. When I went back to that page yesterday, all that language has been removed from the State Parks website. I did mention this to Chris Nielsen with Senator McGuire's office in our conversation yesterday. And as I've suggested earlier, he's looking into it and why we're getting such resistance at this point. I don't know where to go from here, but there's a lot of frustrated people in this community specific to the gate issue that is now in the state clearinghouse. I'm not sure if we should make public comment to that extent about those gates going in. But what I do know is it still sends a very bad message here, and pretty much, in my opinion, defeats the purpose about having people congregate, especially our residents, in these areas that are left open within our right-of-ways of Caltrans adjacent to our state parks.
So do we know the direction? Is this what we want then, as a letter requesting the governor or applicable state agency for vehicular access and parking in state parks? Is that what we're after? Or are we going back to finding out why local control is not, the request is not being made to the local entity involved here for the necessary arrangements to be made?
I think from my standpoint, it could be both. I mean, really, if the website says that they're going to work with us locally, they should be giving that authority to Mr. Silver so that we can do that.
Right. And then we have to make our case to Mr. Silver?
Right now, it's above him, probably to the director.
Okay. All right. So can I get a motion on what direction that we want to go here?
I'd make a motion to direct staff to, one, respond to the issue of gates within state parks, whether it's through a process through the state clearinghouse on the CEQA permitting process, or whether it's to request state parks not proceed with that action here, as it's not justified specific to vandalism. It's an enforcement issue and not a COVID-19 issue. Two, I'd also direct staff to contact Natural Resources Agency Secretary Crowfoot and Director of State Parks, Lisa Margette, to request site-specific lifting of short-term restrictions on access to those public roads.
I'll second that.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Public comment. Mr. Koopman, are you on the line? Did you want to make a comment?
He is on the line, Jerry. He's last four digits 4501, but he's having trouble raising his hand. He's just on a telephone. Not sure how to do that. Mike, it appears you're on now.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Go ahead, Mike.
Okay. Yeah, as far as public comment goes on this, the NorCal Guides and Sportsmen's Association, which I am the regional program manager for the North Coast, have kind of brought this to Supervisor Howard's attention. And this was going in and happening in the dark. And basically, you know, the importance of the locked gate is a value to the future. My hopes are that this COVID-19 stuff, you know, will pass. Yet, if the state and national park are allowed to put in permanent gates, those are permanent. And going in under the cloak of COVID-19 and completely in the dark to all elected officials, including the Del Norte County Board of Supervisors, the sheriff, the Congressman Huffman, the Senator McGuire, all of the above, seems rather secretive and is definitely, in our opinion, an overreach. And my hopes are that we will fight this at the county and state levels as hard as possible. And we have written letters from the NorCal Guide and Sportsmen's Association in opposition. And I thank you for the public comment and the board's support.
Thank you. Any other public comment, Kylie?
I seen that Robert DeRigo had his hand up, but it went back down, so I'm not sure if that was a technical thing or if he didn't mean to. But his hand isn't going back up, so I'm going to say there is no other public comment.
Okay, seeing no other public comment, then we'll bring it back to the board for any comments or questions. Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, carries unanimously. Okay, if that's it, I do want to make a mention about closed session, public comment on closed session items. If you would please get those comments in a written form, either by email or letter to the board clerk, since we have a hard time taking public comment prior to closed session because we are not in an open session environment. Please get those comments in to us before the next closed session.
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Can I make one statement before we end?
Supervisor Gitlin.
Yes, I just wanted to acknowledge that Supervisor Berkowitz made a request for a letter to be drafted to be agendized on our next meeting, seeking exemption from some of the government executive orders, which I supported also. I'd like to see if we have discussion on that to put forward to our next meeting, and also about moving back to the Flynn centers for easier public access with appropriate social protocols involved. So can you please address those two issues Supervisor Berkowitz and I requested?
I did request a special meeting because.
Yeah, I'm sorry, special meeting.
2 weeks, it may be too late.
Yeah, I'm going to take under advisement of a special session. I will work on that. As far as opening the Flynn Center, departments are working on plans for that. So we'll wait until those plans come out, how they're going to do it, what they're going to have to do. So we are working on that. Okay, so if there is nothing else, we will. Yeah, go ahead, Jay. I'm sorry, you wanted to say something. You kind of sound like
it goes back to the beginning of the meeting, and I just wanted to talk a little bit about the potential stimulus package coming down. They call it 4.0. One of the points that I've been working on, and I think that we've gotten there with our advocacy groups, I know our advocates know about it, our lobbyists, is that we would prefer as a small county, obviously, to receive some assistance in regards to lost revenue, et cetera, related to COVID, much like those larger cities. But we'd also like to see that come directly to the counties. That's been a point made by a number of the small counties because many times we'll get something that's filtered through the state and it becomes more difficult to utilize that money for what it really truly is being sent to us for. So if it's sent through a grant program or something, it would have stipulations. So I've talked to our lobbyists and passed that on as a county administrator who, once we know if it's even going to come to us, because I know there's going to be a lot of debate about it, but if it did, we would like to see it come directly to the small counties and cities so that we can use it for what it truly needs to be used for, which is offsetting some of the losses associated with COVID-19.
Jerry, and that was the gist of my brief and request also for our next agenda is those specific points that Jay brings up is also being pushed forward by California State Association of Counties as well as RCRC, as you're aware. So want to make sure that's timely.
Yeah, I did reach out to RCRC. Jay and I did have some conversations with staff at the RCRC level, and we're certainly working on that.
Yeah, I think RCRC, I'm not as sure with CSAC because I haven't had a direct conversation with them, understand that number one, there shouldn't be a limitation at 50,000 population, which I think we've gotten past. And then that should be a direct payment to counties and cities so they can use it for the proper offsetting needs and not be maybe tailored to specific needs that the state tells us they should be. And that's just my, that's an opinion of a number of people, but that's my opinion here also, and would be a recommendation I make to the board as we advocate for this and we go forward with our groups.
Yeah, it would be helpful, Jerry, if we did have a meeting next week to address this, because it is a timely issue according to CSAC to get this in for the next 4.0 round.
Yeah, okay, I will look into that.
Thank you.
See what times we can come up with. We'll work on that. Okay, if there's nothing else, Kylie, did I miss anything?
Not that I've seen.
Okay, we are adjourned. Thank you so much.
Thank you.